Good evening, everyone, and welcome to a new episode of ParentTown TV. Today, I have with me Violet Lim, the founder, co-founder, as well as CEO of Lunch Actually, and she's going to be talking about a very interesting topic, which is a happy marriage after children. Is it even possible? So, for those of you who are tuning in, we're on ParentTown TV, and if you want to ask any questions to Violet, you can just type it on the app. So go to www.parenttown.com, or you can download the app and ask your questions, and Violet's going to answer some of the more popular questions. It's going to be slacked over to me, and I'll read some of the more popular questions to you, Violet.
Yep.
So thank you
Awesome.
for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
So Violet, so tell me, are you married?
Yeah, I'm married.
How long have you been married for?
This year is our 11th year, but we have dated 5 years before that.
So altogether 16 years with the same
Yes,
man.
that's right.
Wow. That's definitely something to an accomplishment in today's day and age with the high divorce rates that we're seeing. So do you have children?
Yeah, we have two. So they are 10 and 7. So we started quite early, like once we got married, and then we're like, okay, let's get started. And yeah, so yes.
Okay, and would you say you have a happy marriage?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, like just any other marriage out there, we have our ups and downs, and both my hubby and I, we are in the business together, so we are quite high D, like very domineering characters. So we do have our fights, our arguments, but we learn to fight fairly, and I think it's very important to know how to fight. But other than that, I would say we are happy, and we learn how to, I think it's a growing process as well. Like, of course, like how we used to be when we dated like 16 years ago. It's very different from the relationship that we have today, but I would say that it's definitely a even more fulfilling relationship now than previously.
And so in the 16 years, what
Yes.
has been the toughest period?
I would say it's actually like sometime last year. Yeah, so we were going through some challenges in the business. So like as a result, like maybe sometimes, even though we do talk about work at home and home at work, but I think last year it was just getting very stressful, and sometimes it's very tense. So as a result, we argue a lot more. And and last year was like our 10th year anniversary as well, I guess. So but it was a learning process for us. So we talked it out, and things are back on track.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah.
So I'm going to ask you the white elephant in the room. I'm sure everyone's dying to know.
Yeah.
You run a dating website.
Yes, that's right.
And you're here talking to us about how to have a happy marriage. There's something that just doesn't gel here. I mean, you are incentivized to see breakups happen for your business. So
I think I thought it was very interesting that you say that, because we never saw it that way. So right now we do have an online dating site. We have which is called eSynchrony, and then we have a mobile app called Lunch Click. But our roots, we actually started off as an offline dating agency, and some might even say like a matchmaking agency. So we have always been incentivized to actually help people get together. So I mean, some people have said to me, it's like if people don't get together, or you just give them a bad match, wouldn't that be better, because they might renew their membership and things like that, right? But we don't see it this way, because we see that if people are happy, they will actually introduce people to us. And in fact, we have had a lot of people who will introduce us to their best friends, or even their brothers or their sisters. And I think that's the testimony to the work that we do. So I think, to just cut the long story short, it's we focus on I would say the long term, because we believe like positive word of mouth will help us to grow our business. So we are not looking at the short term.
Okay, very interesting.
Yeah.
For those of you who are tuning in, we're on ParentTown TV, and now I'm going to be asking some of the questions that you have asked Violet earlier today.
Yep.
So we have a question from Mrs. Pavin Chopra,
Yep.
who asked, how do you work on the spark once it's already gone? Is there any tips on how to revive it?
Okay, I think, of course, one of the main thing is like to make sure it's not gone. Okay, so I think a lot of times it's like a lot of young couples, they feel that like the wedding is sort of like the end. Like people spend so much time preparing for weddings, but I always say that the wedding is actually just the beginning. It's more important to then continuously build on a marriage. So if you feel that the spark is like going or gone, I think a few things, like how you must go back to remember how you fell in love with each other. And I think a lot of couples, they tend to rewrite history. So of course, when you got together and then you decide to get married, like there was like all this love, romance, passion, right? You need to like go back to that and remind yourself, why did you fall in love with your husband or your wife? And I think secondly is like you need to go back to doing things together, because like after being parents, right, like a lot of times like people will start going on different tracks. Maybe like the lady, like maybe if she's a working mom, or maybe she's not, she might just end up focusing a lot on the children. And maybe for the husband, it's a lot on the career, and a lot of times like their paths don't really meet. So like to just get the spark going again, do something together, like maybe do a hobby class that both of you are interested in, and like just having that sort of interaction would help to like build back up the spark and the passion.
Very interesting. We have someone who's asked anonymously, once a leopard, always a leopard. Is there any way of changing someone?
I think we should never go into a relationship thinking that we are going to change someone. I think that's really going to be very tough. But at the same time, I don't think that people will always stay the same as well. Yeah, so I mean, like I mentioned just now, for my husband and I, when we first started in the relationship, like I was actually the more bad-tempered one. Like, I'm like very short-fused, and he's actually the more patient one. But now in our relationship, the role has sort of reversed a bit. Like, so I think maybe due to work stress and things like that, he actually become more short-tempered, and I actually become the more patient one. So I won't agree that once a leopard, always a leopard. But at the same time, don't go into a relationship expecting that someone would change. That would actually be very frustrating.
And 7 years itch. Is it real? Is it deadly? How do you overcome it?
I think it's real. Like I'm not saying like because we say that it's real, everybody should go out and cheat on their spouse or whatever.
Right.
Yeah, but I think just like in any relationship, like there would come to a point where both parties just get so comfortable with each other, and like sometimes like familiarity like do breed contempt. Like what used to be very endearing for each other, it starts to become very annoying or irritating. Yeah, so I think that is something that is real. But having said that, I think what people need to realize, right, is that you are not alone. You're not the only person who's feeling this way. So what I always tell people, it's like all the problems that you're currently facing with your spouse, like it's not going to change once you change the spouse. I know it sounds like very strange, but it's true, because a lot of the problems that couples go through is not so much just pertinent to the person's character or personality. It's also because of gender differences. Yeah, so I think like couples would come to a point where they feel things are getting tougher. It's not easy, but you just need to ride across that wave. And once you ride across that, then it's okay.
It's easier said than done to tell someone to ride over the wave.
Yeah.
I mean, do we have any strategies with coping with not scratching that itch?
Okay, so usually, right, like I feel there's always a pull and push factor. Yeah, so like maybe has always been a pull factor, but because there's no push factor, it doesn't happen. But the problem is like when there's a pull factor and there's also a push factor, and that's where I think it's important to work on the marriage. Like don't like just sweep things under the carpet. Like when things are not working out well, like you're not happy with your spouse about certain things, like voice it out. I mean, of course, like not in a nasty way, but find a time where you can both talk about it and then work on it. I think the trouble is like when people don't address it and they just let it drift and they feel that they are in control. They are like, oh, like yes, there's this like temptation out there, but I think I can deal with it. But a lot of times, like why things happen is because something else is happening at home. Maybe like there's a new child, like, or maybe spouse, started to get very involved in something else, not spending enough time together, and that's when things happen. So I think it's very important to look out for both sides, like not just thinking like, oh, I can deal with the temptation, but also making sure that things are going well at home.
Good advice there. So here's a really interesting question. How many times a month should a married with kids couple be having sex? Is there a minimum amount of times? I'm sure this is on almost every postpartum mom's mind, like, oh gosh, what's the minimum amount of time I need to have sex?
Okay, I think the bottom line is this. I understand that like a lot of moms, right, once they have kids, or especially like just after they have kids, like sex is probably the last thing that they are thinking about. But yeah, I think I should look into the camera when I say this. But ladies, like it or not, like men need sex. Yeah. I've done some research on this question actually, and I've seen portals that say that maybe like a few times a month. There are like people who say like a few times a week. Yeah, I think this is understanding that you and your spouse need to come to a conclusion, because there's no point like we say that, oh, you need to do it like a few times a month, but actually for your husband it's like a few times a week. I think you need to talk about it. And I think another thing that I think it's very important is, unlike last time, like where you have time of the world, but now, because like with your kids, with your work, like it might sound very unromantic, but I think it's quite helpful to actually schedule in sex.
I'm pretty sure no man wants to hear that. Scheduling in sex. That's the takeaway of today's Ask the Expert session. Okay, so but what you're trying to say is that to speak to your spouse about it and try to come up with amount of frequency that works for both
sides. And I think because like sometimes, like maybe for moms, right, we are just so busy, like we have so many things to do, right? Maybe sometimes we just need to psych ourselves up for it as well. So it's like by just scheduling it in, okay, maybe don't tell your husband that you did, then you just get yourself ready for it, and then it happens, rather than like
Yeah, and I love how men magically think that everything works out, right? No, we need to shave our legs, okay? We need definitely advance notice. Okay, so is co-sleeping with kids harmful to a couple's sex life? Any advice on what parents can do to make the best of this situation? Did you co-sleep with your kids?
Yeah, I did.
Okay.
Yeah, so we actually moved them out about when I think my daughter was about 2.5 years. Yeah, and that also means that my son was about 5 years.
Oh.
But we did have like a sliding door.
Okay.
Yeah.
So was it harmful to your sex life, and do you think it's harmful in general to
I think it's like, again, it's a personal choice, right? So I think, and also depend on like the kids, like how sound a sleeper they are, I guess. Yeah. So obviously, if like your kids, like they are very what do you call it? They just wake up very easily, then probably it would. Like for my son, like things would drop on him and he will still sleep.
Oh wow. Okay. And I guess it also depends on how noisy the parents are. Right? Okay, waiting asks, my hubby travels a lot for work. How do we keep our marriage strong other than doing the regular Skype call?
I think it's important to have a common goal. And another thing is also to understand each other's dreams as well. So I think, like sometimes, of course, the husband might need to travel because of work, like his dream is to build up like a very good foundation for the family, so in future you can retire, blah blah blah, right? But I think at the same time it's good to understand each other's dreams. So by understanding each other's dreams, you can have common goals that you can work towards. So other than just communicating just through Skype, but if you have common projects that you're working on, like I think that would be a much easier way to keep it going. Yeah.
Okay. Well, moms, again, you're on ParentTown TV live right now, and we're speaking to the CEO of Lunch, actually, Violet Lim. And if you have any questions for her, please ask it on the ParentTown app, and I'll be reading it out to her. So we have a question from an anonymous user who says, I don't feel like having sex with my husband. I just don't feel attracted to him sexually anymore. I don't really know what to do. Is a sexless marriage ever okay? And we have 3 kids.
I read somewhere that apparently, like, I can't remember, is it like 10% or 15% of marriages out there are actually sexless marriage? I'm sure it works for some people, but I think it doesn't work for most people. And I think, like I mentioned just now, which I'll do it again, men need sex. It's just going to be really tough.
I think every dad is going to take that soundbite and amplify it everywhere.
It's just going to be really tough, and I think it's just like how we need certain things, like we need love. Like let's say our husband just say, okay, we are not going to give you love anymore. It's just not going to work out, right? But again, it's just the communication. So I think in this particular reader has mentioned, she feels that she's not attracted to her husband physically anymore, and I think maybe that's something that they can work on. Of course, it's going to be tough, like telling your husband that I'm not attracted to you physically anymore. But at the same time, if that can be solved, then that means they don't need to be in a sexless marriage. And I think at the same time, sometimes it's a good idea to actually seek help. Yeah, and the way I see it, it's like there's nothing wrong with seeking help, even though maybe in the Asian context people feel that it's a taboo. It means that I'm not good enough. But the way I see it, it's like we go to school for so many things, right? Like, but marriage, is not something that we have been taught to do.
Yeah.
And if it's just not working out, and we really want it to work out, why not seek help from someone who knows exactly what to do and just give us like the solution?
Great advice, sir. So another anonymous user says, I have 2 kids and I really feel that my marriage is heading for a divorce. My husband cheated on me. I don't think that a happy marriage after kids is possible. Why should I forgive him?
Yeah, I think that's the key in this whole question. Like, because she is still so angry, yeah, and as a result, that's why she cannot move on. But I think at the same time, like, she just needs to ask herself, like, ultimately, what does she want out of this? Because the fact that she's still there, right, that means that there is something there for her, be it maybe it's for the kids, or maybe she still loves the husband but she just cannot forgive him. I have seen both sides of this. I mean, I have seen people who like just say that, okay, I'm just going to walk out because I wouldn't stand for my husband having cheated on me. But I've seen people who stay for the sake of the children as well, because they have seen like maybe broken families like have a very great impact on the children. So I think she just need to weigh like, what does she really want ultimately? Is it more like a vendetta against her husband, or is it something that she can work with? Because, okay, I have come across a real life situation where they actually stayed together, yeah, but the husband, right, is just have this anger against the wife. So even if they stayed together, it's actually very bad for the children. So I think if in that case, my suggestion is maybe it's just better to move on. It's actually better for the children as well. But if you can find it within yourself, to like understand why it happened, what happened, and like work it out again with a counselor to make sure like things can go forward, then you need to really be able to forgive. Because if you can't, right, it's going to impact the children as well.
So forgiveness is the key to it.
Yeah, definitely.
So we have a question from Rocky, who goes down to basics. She wants to know, how would you define a happy marriage in your own words?
Wow, this is not easy. I think ultimately, right, I think a happy marriage is not like one where there's no arguments, like where it's just lovey-dovey all the time. I think happy marriage is both parties like I would say really like building a life together, and also like witnessing each other's like milestones in life, yeah, and being there to support each other to fulfill each other's dreams.
Okay. So being there for each other, supporting each other.
Yeah.
So I love my husband, but I don't want to have sex. But I want to keep him happy. What should I do? I love it. So many sex questions. And all of them were anonymous.
You know what? I think the next person you should get on this show, it's sex therapist.
I agree. So yeah, so she doesn't want to have sex, but she wants to keep him happy. What should she do?
I think she should talk to the husband. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, because it's like,
But they say, that the way to a man's heart is through his tummy. So do you think cooking will work?
yeah, she can try that.
Okay. What's the best way to patch up after a fight?
Okay, I think it's very important that someone needs to take the first move. Yeah. And of course it's best if like people can take turns making the first move, but sometimes it just doesn't work out that way. So like I'm sure in every couple there usually is someone who would make the first move. and after that, like really to just to go through, I would say like debrief, like in our career or work term, right, to just understand like what went wrong, and then try and not do it again. Because it's very important sometimes, not just whether you have fights, but it's how you fight. And I think that's the part which is the most important part, like how you should fight and how you should not fight. Yeah.
So an anonymous dad asks us, my wife talks about divorce and walking out over very small fights. Should I just concede defeat?
So I recall myself at some point, I mean not in a marriage, but like when I was in a relationship, and I would just like, oh yeah, let's break up, like we're so upset. So I think sometimes it's like that's her way of sort of calling for help. Yeah, it's like there are challenges, there are problems. Like she might not be wanting a divorce because like maybe if she 100% wants a divorce, she would have taken action on it. But if she just keeps saying she wants a divorce, but she has not taken any concrete action on it, so it might just be her way of saying like, hey, like I want to work something out. How can I work this out? So maybe just try and do something different. So whatever they have been trying to do to solve their problems, maybe to like do something different and see whether it works out better. And again, I think it's important at some point to seek help from a marriage counselor.
Okay. Another mom asks us, after birth, how do we ensure we are still spending enough time with each other? How can I give enough time to my marriage and my child?
Okay, I think that's a very, very important question. I think one of the problems that a lot of moms face after getting married is that, like having a child, is that there's lack of time and lack of energy. Yeah, because you're just so busy with like the baby and things like that, right? So what I would suggest is that really again, like schedule in couple time, like schedule in dates. I actually do that. Yeah.
You are the queen of scheduling.
Yeah, really. So I put into my Trello like 2 dates a month at least. I put in the dates, I take it off, and I make sure that every month, like when I review my calendar, like it has been done, and I schedule it for the next month. So I mean, it sounds like, okay, is that necessary? But I think it works. So
Okay.
yeah, that's my advice.
Okay. And we've got the last question for tonight, which is our relationships are getting worse once baby is born.
Mm-hmm.
There are lots of arguments on how to take care of child, living issues such as housework and finance.
Mm-hmm.
I found that our thinking is not aligned. Some more, my mother-in-law is staying with us. Every time I blame on him, my mother-in-law will help to solve it. In the end, I'll be speechless. I'm married to him, but I'm now married to his family. So what should she do?
I think there are quite a few different pieces in this question, so I'll try to tackle it bit by bit. One thing is parenting styles and how to do things. My very quick answer to that is like, ladies, sometimes it's like our way might not be the best way, even though we think it is. And also, if we keep telling them to do it our way, after a while they'll just lose motivation. So just let them do it, and the more they do it, the better they will become. First one. Secondly is I think it's important to talk to the husband about the mother-in-law intervention. Because of course if like it's the mother-in-law and the husband should just feel like very outnumbered. Yeah, so I think it's important to just have a very honest talk with the husband to say that, hey, I appreciate the help that your mom is giving us, but at the same time I think we need to settle problems on our own and not with her getting involved. Yeah. And is there any bit that I've missed?
No, so she just wants to know that she feels that she's now married to his family. So
I think that cannot be avoided, because I believe a marriage often is a marriage of two families. But I just think she need to put her foot down on like the intervention from the mother-in-law.
okay. So any last advice to our parents for tips on how to have a happy marriage?
Yes, my last advice would be, as difficult as it might sound sometimes, it is important to put your marriage as number one and not your kids as number one. Yeah, because it's like if your marriage is not working out, then you can't provide a good home and a good foundation for your kids anyway.
Okay, well, thank you so much, Violet, for
Thank you,
coming
Roshni.
down today. And for everyone here, we were on ParentTown TV, where we were having a session on how to have a happy marriage. We have Violet Lim with us, and if you missed today's session, no issues. Just Violet's going to be available on ParentTown, and she can
Yep.
answer a few more questions.
Yep.
So ask it on her channel, and she'll be happy to oblige. And if Violet doesn't answer the question, there'll be people from the in-house team at ParentTown who answers your question. At ParentTown, we promise you no unanswered questions. Thank you very much for tuning in, and I'm looking forward to seeing you all for our next session. Happy parenting!